They circled the island to look for bodies and to check the numerous waterline caves where men could hide. While the guards hunted, the other prisoners were held in their cells waiting to be interrogated.
They talked to all those guys. You couldn't get no one to talk on Alcatraz. None of these guys would ever talk.
At the same time, the dragnet was rapidly expanding.
The search was supposedly one of the largest manhunts since the Lindbergh baby kidnapping. And it was an air, land, and sea search. The Coast Guard put out 3 cutters and aircraft, all the local police, the FBI, of course, were called.
When the federal agents arrived, they were amazed at what they found.
The first questions that arose is, what the dickens are those blankets doing up there on top of B Block?
But what the FBI found behind the blankets was even more shocking.
It literally looks like a hardware store up there. Every sort of a tool that you could imagine had either been constructed or literally stolen from the shops or elsewhere on the prison. All the detritus necessary for a very carefully planned and complicated escape.
These tools are the actual ones the prisoners used. They're held in the prison archives and are rarely seen. In addition to all this equipment, the search turned up some clues to help piece together the true story.
Well, we know that the men actually built 2 rafts. One of them was found, apparently left behind for Alan Clayton West. It was a smaller raft. It was not so well built.
There was a life preserver left on top of the cell block. There was a paddle left on top of the roof. The life preserver that was found on top of the cell block was West's. They did not need a 4th life preserver, so they left that behind for West in case he got out.
The investigators doubted the 3 men could make it ashore on a flimsy raft made of old raincoats. However, as no bodies were found, the FBI operated on the assumption that the prisoners did in fact make it to land. Word of the escape was quickly picked up by the press. It was a very big story, and hundreds of leads poured in.
I remember the national press that was involved in this, the big FBI manhunt. Their pictures were all over every single paper, probably around the world.
2 days after the escape, the search uncovered something in San Francisco Bay.
The first thing that was found was a paddle. It was floating between Angel Island and Alcatraz. And it was matched to a paddle that had been left behind on top of the block, so they could prove that it was a homemade Alcatraz paddle.
The next day, the crew of an Army debris boat discovered an important clue in the waters just off Angel Island, more than a mile from Alcatraz.
The second thing that was found about 2 days later was a packet of photographs. Now, it was actually in about 3 feet of water. It was made of the same raincoat material as the life preserver on top of the block. And when they opened it up, they found about 88 photographs, many of which were identified on the back as being an Anglin family member.
Included in the packet were 9 slips of paper with names and addresses of friends and family. The FBI believed the fugitives would never have left this behind. They decided that the raft must have sunk and the fugitives drowned. But not everyone agreed.
Back then, when they found their photographs, the family photographs in the water, I figured then that they had drowned. But, of course, again, you never know. They could do that to throw them off their trail.
Members of the Anglin family believe the 3 escaping men made it across the bay alive.
We had sent them pictures of different members of the family. They had them in a little plastic bag. And they let go of that stuff probably to throw the law off. The law finally said, well, they wouldn't depart from something like that. Well, that didn't mean nothing to them. They wanted to get away. I think they made it.
Over the next few weeks, more confusing clues were found.
1, then 2, then 3 of the life jackets the men were wearing on the night of their escape floated and appeared in San Francisco Bay. One of them just off the shore of Alcatraz Island, one of them out beyond the Golden Gate Bridge, and another one closer to Angel Island.
But their big raft was never found, nor were their bodies. The FBI then turned their attention to the fugitives' families, especially the large southern family of John and Clarence Anglin.
And it has been my experience and the experience of everybody that works this kind of work that these people that escape always maintain some type of contact with their family.
The Bureau began surveillance of the Anglin family members, most of whom lived in Ruskin, Florida, a fishing community on Tampa Bay near the Gulf of Mexico.
They were pretty often coming out to our house to talk to different members of the family. Had we seen them? Had we heard from them? And hundreds of more questions. The mail had been watched, you know, also for a number of years probably by the FBI, thinking that they might make some kind of contact with us, you know.
For 15 years, the FBI searched for Frank Morris and John and Clarence Anglin, chasing leads in America and abroad. They continued to watch family members. Nothing of significance ever turned up. 15 years after the Anglin brothers and Frank Morris escaped from Alcatraz, the FBI still had not found them or their bodies. In 1977, the U.S. Marshals took over the search.
One of our significant core missions in the Marshal Service is our Fugitive Apprehension Program. And that basically is we look for individuals that are wanted by the federal court. Those that have escaped, that's our bread and butter, that's what we've been doing for years now.
But could men like these really avoid capture for 40 years and disappear without a trace?
Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers had such a criminal history going back to their childhood, and many, many escapes and escape attempts. They got in and out of trouble of all kinds of reasons during their entire lives. So the question has always arisen in my mind, could these three individuals get away and stay out of trouble for all these many years since then?
Once you escape from Alcatraz, you go underground, and that's it for the rest of your life. You simply become part of the woodwork. You're ordinary.
Sightings of the fugitives and leads to their whereabouts trickle in to this day.
A lot of phone calls, a lot of leads. Some were good and some were the typical one where I just saw somebody who looks like him in a 7-Eleven, or I saw somebody passing me by in a vehicle. But there were a couple, 2 or 3 real good ones that we ended up following up. This mystery has hung around for 38 years. And people being as they are, they cheer for the underdog, and I'm sure a lot of people think, are wishing and hoping that they did make it out. And we're just wishing and hoping that we will find the answer to that question.
Many believe the raft deflated and the convicts had to swim for their lives.
They were old, Navy issue raincoats. I have to think that the raft started to break up almost immediately, and they started to sink, and they were forced to put on their life jackets, and they were fighting cold, cold water with all of their clothes on.
The government's position is that the escaping prisoners probably drowned in the bay, but others argue they have no hard evidence of this.
The Bureau of Prisons, to this day, will tell you that they drowned. But there's no proof that they drowned. Police officers will admit that anytime there's a drowning, those corpses usually wind up on the shores